Welcome to this Skillick Explains video. And this week I want to ask a perennial question, if you like, one that sits out there and people ponder, which is, when should you seek advice? Is there a moment in life where it makes sense? Is there something that can happen that makes it more likely? Do you not need advice? So let's just take a look at that one in this video. Now, there are basically three ways, I would say, that you can run your financial life, you can run your investments, you can map your future, for example, you can plan, and that is digitally, through a human advisor, or some combination of the two. So let's take those in turn. There are lots of investing apps out there, and some of them offer more than pure in goes £50 a month into, let's say, a portfolio, and over time, hopefully it builds up. I mean, that is something that apps can definitely do. Others claim to offer wealth planning advice on top. But I would say, really, the place for an app, no matter what the marketing suggests, the essential place for an app is when you want to keep things simple. Yes, all I want to do is identify what I can afford to save out of my net, income versus expenditure, and tuck that away on an easy basis. Lock up and leave. Direct debit through an app, I can pick it up, check what's happening easily, job done. It's going to suit most people who are investing smaller amounts, because there isn't much to discuss really, other than perhaps how much you can squeeze out of your budget to save long term, because the earlier you start and the more you invest, the better. And some people, in fairness, will use it for larger sums as well, where perhaps they're reasonably experienced, they've got the knowledge, and they just want to park some of the money they've got into an automated, algorithm-driven investing app. So there's where I see digital solutions existing. But the reason I don't think you can do everything through an app, and I don't think you will ever be able to do everything through an app, is because we're humans, we're not robots, all right? Leaving AI to one side for a moment. In uncertain markets, and as the UK in September 2023 looks like it might be, I say might, be heading for some sort of recession, some sort of downturn, in uncertain markets, a silent electronic app isn't all that comforting. You've got nobody to chase, you've got no one to talk to, no one to exchange ideas with, and people are prone to make mistakes, which I'll come back to in a moment. Then there are life changes, all right? And apps don't really cater for what you're supposed to do when life does change, coming back to that in a moment. And then there's complexity, which is linked to point two. So let's take each of those in turn. So uncertain markets. First of all, increase the likelihood you'll make a mistake. And the reason I say that is when the market just carries on rising, more or less unbroken, you're not going to make a mistake. You just keep putting money in and it goes up. You put more in, it goes up. But when markets get more volatile, as inevitably they do, people panic sell. They push the sell button on an app, not realizing they might be seriously reducing their chances of making long-term wealth, because the moment you take money out of the market, you might miss some of the best investing days. Or people use their investment portfolio like a cash point machine. That's not the right approach. They just sell shares thinking, well, I need the money now. That's not a structured approach. On top of that, apps don't offer much in the way of reassurance. They don't really help you. Personally, I want to talk to someone when things are not going well. I want to understand what's happening, and I want the relevant guidance. I might want to find out a bit more about a particular aspect of the market. So if someone says to me, well, Tim, bonds, IOUs can be an alternative to cash. I'm not going to want to read all about that in an app necessarily, statically. I want to sort of discuss it with someone, have that conversation. Then there are life changes. So number two, when life is simple, you can keep investing simple. Perhaps if you're young, perhaps if you don't have responsibilities, but unfortunately life has a habit of throwing out challenges. Marriage, divorce, not all of these are bad, by the way, having kids, moving jobs, inheriting a windfall, earning a windfall, selling a business to get a windfall, relocating abroad to another part of the country. Now suddenly, these are challenges where I'm not convinced an app can do all the work for you. This is where, personally, I'd want to have a conversation with someone, get some advice, find out what my options are, what are the tax implications, and so on. And that brings me to complications. As life changes, you get more responsibility. So suddenly people are writing powers of attorney where you're their nominated attorney, which means you will be responsible for all of their financial affairs, potentially, not just your own. Tax rules constantly change, what you can shelter, the pensions rules and so on. And maximising what you get out of those is difficult through a pure app, I think. You may find you're taking on different assets, you inherit assets. Maybe you've taken on property. Perhaps you're suddenly going into investments in a way that you never thought you would in the past. You get more choice. As you get wealthier, as you go up the food chain, you've got more options. And some of those options get more complicated. And then, of course, there are the setbacks in life. And those can range from losing a job, getting ill at work, for example. All of those things, it does help, I think, to have access at least to human advice. So where am I going with all this? I think inevitably a hybrid approach is probably the best of all worlds. So basically what you're doing is matching your approach to your life stage. Yeah, keep it simple on an app when life is simple. But actually, as your knowledge and experience changes and your goals change, as you take on more responsibility, as your financial path widens, if you like, then I think a mixture, we're not going to just abandon app-based investing. Apps will always have a place, but a mixture of that and human advice, I think, is actually a pragmatic choice. It's kind of the best of all worlds. Anyway, with no more ado, I'll stop talking there. So for more on that, killick.com/learn. It's not a bad place to go. In particular, if you want more on tax shelters, which is something I mentioned, then there is a tax-effective savings tab on this side. You've also got my guides. There are 6 of them. That would be editor@killick.com. There's one sitting here. And there's Confidant, which normally has a planning article in it, and those can be quite useful, ranging round many issues that most of us face as life does get more complicated. And for a copy of that, again, editor@killick.com.